Hello, this is Craig Wescoe recording for TCGplayer.com, and today we're going to be playing this Boros control deck in Modern. So it's a little different than some of the decks I've been playing. It's not an aggressive deck with a bunch of creatures. In fact, it has just 5 creatures. It has 4 Simian Spirit Guide, which most of the time aren't even a creature, and 1 Brimaz King of Wescoes. So this is a kind of prison-y control deck that usually wins with going ultimate on Nahiri and attacking with Emrakul. However, it can also win via attacking with Gideon Jura or making a bunch of soldiers with Elspeth. It can also do things like ultimate Ajani to Armageddon the opponent, or it can just cast Bust and Armageddon both players. So this is kind of an interesting deck. It has a lot of feels for original Magic, where you have Armageddon, you have literal Wrath of God, you have the mini Wrath of God, and then you just kind of have all these control elements. It's kind of like the old Moat Wrath of God type control decks. Now, another interesting thing this deck has is it has the boom part of Boom Bust and some combos with that. So on turn 2, you can play a Flagstones and any other land that produces red and cast Boom targeting your Flagstones and the opponent's land. So then your Flagstones get sacrificed, and then you can search your library for a Plains or a Sacred Foundry, because that also counts as a Plains. And you can even do that on turn 1, which happens on the draw sometimes with a Spirit Guide, if you just want to kill the opponent's land on turn 1. And a lot of decks, they operate off of really low lands, so like a Death Shadow Zoo deck or an Infect deck or something like that. Just killing their turn 1 land oftentimes just sets them really far back, especially if they mulligan. The more common play when you have a Spirit Guide on your turn 1, especially on the play, is Chalice of the Void. So Chalice of the Void, for 1, can counter a lot of spells in most decks in Modern, and it counters absolutely nothing in our deck. So we don't play Lightning Bolt, Path to Exile, any of that jazz, because we're a Chalice of the Void deck. That's the type of control deck we are. We also only have Boom as our 2-mana spell. So we can Chalice of the Void for 2 to shut off even more cards in the opponent's deck. So a Chalice on 1, a Chalice on 2 really restricts what the opponent's able to do. And Blood Moon is another way to just really shut down a huge part of the opponent's game plan. If we can play like a turn 2 Blood Moon off maybe a Spirit Guide, or even just turn 3 Blood Moon, that'll put the opponent down to usually like a basic and some shock lands, or sometimes they don't have any basics if they don't see it coming, or they're playing one of the decks that just like a Death Shadow deck where they just don't have any basics. And so that'll shut down that. It'll also take care of any of the creature lands, and then we can use Boom to destroy their basic land if they have one. And so that's kind of a very important purpose of Boom in this deck, is to kill their basic so that they can just get locked under Blood Moon. So we're locking them under Chalice, we're locking them under Blood Moon, and these cards are just great by themselves against a lot of decks in Modern. And then in conjunction with each other, it just puts the opponent, they're basically skipping half of their draw steps, essentially, because they just can't do anything with the card they draw because of Blood Moon or Chalice. And then the other way we're gaining control of the game is through Wrath of God. We have 3 copies, and 3 Anger of the Gods. So the gods are very upset with this deck. They're angry and they're wrathful. We're just killing all the creatures, and the only creature we have is Brimaz, and he survives anger, and it's pretty easy to play around your own wrath with your 1 creature in your deck. And then we want to take over the game with Planeswalkers. Leyline of Sanctity plays an important role. So Chalice of the Void on 1 is obviously really good against burn spells and discard spells, But the discard spells can get underneath the Chalice for 1 unless we have a Spirit Guide and we're on the play. And the discard spells, especially Thoughtseize, can take any of our Planeswalkers. Inquisition can take our Chalice or our Blood Moon. You can slow us down by taking a Spirit Guide. So the hand disruption is very, well, disruptive against us. And so Leyline shuts that off. It also takes the burn spells out of play because we basically have no creatures for them to target with their burn spells. So they're just, our face is the only target for their burn spells. And so Leyline takes away that option. And it also protects our Planeswalkers because if they're trying to burn a Planeswalker, they have to target the player and redirect it to the Planeswalker. So if we have a Leyline, that lightning bolt in our hand can't hit our Planeswalker. So that's another interesting interaction that happens there. Another interesting interaction has to do with Ajani Vengeant. So we talked about the boom part of Boom Bust being able to take the opponent off a basic land when they're under Blood Moon, so if they have like a swamp or forest or an island or whatever. And then Ajani Vengeant can just keep that land tapped. You can also keep an Ether Vial tapped, which is another way to get out from underneath a Blood Moon. So Ajani Vengeant, he can kill a creature that's on the battlefield that they put out there before the Blood Moon resolved. If we have an Ajani out there that's, say, tapping like a 5/6 Tarmogoyf or something, and then they cast more creatures, we could Anger of the Gods, kill all their other creatures, and then minus Ajani to finish off the Tarmogoyf, something like that. It also can help us gain some life, which is sometimes relevant in matchups, like if we don't have a Leyline and we take some early damage, trying to set up a Wrath, something like that. So Ajani's just a really cool Planeswalker, and then in control matchups, we could just destroy all the opponent's lands, which that comes up sometimes in the deep control matchup. And then Gideon Jora is a way to protect all our other Planeswalkers because he has so much loyalty. You just plus him, he's at 8. Then all the creatures have to attack Gideon, which is pretty convenient when you have a Brumaz that can block, but also just way to protect all your other Planeswalkers. Make sure Nahiri goes ultimate, and Ajani can keep tapping down creatures, things like that. And then Elspeth is a way to minus to kill big creatures. So Anger of the Gods kills little creatures, Wrath kills all the creatures, but Elspeth can kill the big guys, or you just plus Elspeth to make jump blockers, which happens quite frequently. And then at some point you amass enough tokens where you can start attacking, even potentially ultimate Elspeth. So it's just another way to win the game outside of the Nahiri plus Emrakul. And then Nahiri also, it provides some utility. Can minus to kill an Ether Vial that's tapped, can minus to kill a key enchantment, maybe a Totem Armor against Boggle to cause the Daybreak Coronet to fall off, and keep our Planeswalker from dying, things like that. So there's a lot of kind of neat interactions with this deck. It's primarily a prison type of control deck that just really makes life difficult for so many decks in the format. And then in the sideboard, just a quick rundown. Rest in Peace, all the graveyard decks. Living End, Dredge is a big deck right now. I also bring it in against Tarmogoyf type decks because we don't really utilize the graveyard with this deck outside of like Flagstones of Trocaire. So Rest in Peace, we can bring it in as a value card or as a haymaker. Stony Silence comes in against Ether Vial, against like Merfolk and Hate Bears, things like that. But it also comes in against Affinity, Lantern, any of those sort of decks that, even Tron, the decks that rely heavily on activating their artifacts. Defense Grid is our answer to decks that have Counterspell. So we want to resolve our Planeswalkers. We don't just want our Nahiris and our Ajanis and our Gideons to get countered. And if we can stick this on turn 2 or even turn 1, probably don't want to Spirit Guide it out. But we cast it on turn 2, then our Blood Moon resolves on turn 3, then our Planeswalkers resolve on the rest of the turns. Shining Shoal is an addition I made to the deck. The deck was played a couple months ago by the Agent 002 on Magic Online, and I made a few changes. One of the changes, I replaced some card that I'd like to pretend doesn't exist, Sulfur Elemental, with Shining Shoal. Shining Shoal is really good right now because Infect and Burn are two of the biggest decks in the format, and Shining Shoal is excellent against both. So the Infect deck tries to go all in to kill you, and you're just like Shining Shoal, redirect the creature's damage to itself. So the Infector will infect itself and give it -1 counter, so it'll definitely die no matter what it is. Or you could target the player, whatever. Basically not die is the key for 0 mana. And then Burn kind of has the same effect where they attack with their creature, you can have the creature kill itself, or they try to burn your Planeswalker or something and you redirect it to their creature. So they basically lightning bolted their own Goblin Guide instead of your Planeswalker. Just a really kind of sweet card right now. And it gets around our Chalice, so it's like a lightning bolt that doesn't get eaten by our own Chalice. Crumble to Dust, which is good against Valakut, good against Tron, good against sort of any deck that's trying to build up a big, do something big with their mana. And Ghostly Prison is a card that I added as extra protection against decks that go wide. So like Merfolk goes wide, Dredge goes wide, Affinity goes wide, all these decks that just want to attack with a lot of different creatures. Now, keep in mind this cannot protect you. It cannot protect Planeswalkers. So they can attack Planeswalkers without paying any mana. They just can't attack you as a player unless they pay 2. So it won't help you protect your Planeswalkers. It'll only help you protect your life total. So keep that in mind with this card. So this is the deck. Let's see how it goes. Red-white Boros Control, a very Craig Wescoe deck. Well, all the Planeswalkers are white. We have Elspeth, we have Gideon, we have Nahiri, we have Ajani. We basically have the whole team of white Planeswalkers. So maybe that's what stood out to me and why I like it. Let's see how it goes.